know it's been a while, but I wanted to just do a quick video of something I've been working on, or something I've been doing for a long time with Maya, and which is part of the customization stuff that I do to make my life a little bit easier. So I've already talked about marking menus for the hotbox, and I was recently reminded of, um, one that comes up all the time, and that is this right-click menu here, which by default in Maya is complete tool and select all. Now, I have been using Maya since the beta of the first version, and I have never used that ever. Select all, I never want to select all, ever. That's like the worst thing you can do in Maya. You're just asking for trouble. And then complete tool, I guess I'm so used to just hitting enter that I've never really used it. I'm sure people use it. I don't use it. So anyway, so I've actually gone in and changed that. And it's really easy to do. There's a script called build object menu items now. And what you want to do is open up a script editor. And make sure you're in a Mel tab, which I think I am. Hold on a second. I gotta get to the very last tab. Cool. All right. So, and you want to do what is, and the name of the script. So I know this because I've looked it up. Object menu items now. So that'll tell me where it is. I think the way I found it, I'm gonna copy that real quick, is originally I did history echo all commands and just clicked, and you see you get this right there. So I could have just done it that way. Cool. And basically this script is just saying build this thing, right? We don't have to worry about that, but what you could do is just come, I'm on Windows, so Control C, Windows key E, and then drop it in there, and it's automatically going to open up that script in my favorite text editor. So probably Notepad++ for most people. This is Context, which I've been using, oh my god, forever. It's a super simple script editor. I love it. It actually has a lot of really great Mel highlighting that's very easy to customize and make yourself, but there are Mel highlighters out there. I don't know if anybody still updates it, but I still use it all the time. But anyway, if you go down, you know, you must, be a little overwhelmed, but if you go down, you'll see in, this section down here, oh my god, look at this. I'm in Maya 2020, and this still has an option from 2014. Now, what's kind of funny about that is the version, what that does is actually highlights it. So if I said it was version 2020, and I have highlighting of new items on, which I think I do. Yeah, okay. So if I go back to this, now you never want to save over the original because this is down in Autodesk. So just save it in your documents, current version. I'm just going to save it there as what it is. And just for fun, I'm going to change that to 2020. Save it. I'll go to that directory. And drop that in there. And now you see it actually highlights it green if you have that turned on. I always leave that on. I find it very handy. So that's not going to help me much, but if I go back to that script, you'll see you have the label. And a lot of these are callbacks to other things. It gets very confusing fast. I usually, ignore that stuff. The radial position. So your radial position is where it is in space. So north, south, east, west, northwest, southwest, blah, 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 right? So it's very easy to add another command there, or another menu item, by just copying and pasting. And honestly, I think that they left it so empty on purpose so that people will be like, I want to add to that, right? I don't know, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. And you can, it's pretty simple Mel scripting. You don't have to go too crazy. Make sure, things are where they need to be. Let's go to east and yay, whoops. Well, whatever, I'll do that. And I'll drag and drop it back in. You see it shows up, and now I have my menu, and it prints Yaya. So, yay, figured it out. Anyway, so what I did is I made my own. And ordinarily, I leave this in the directory, in the scripts directory, because by default, Maya will source that. In fact, I will do that now so I don't forget. Throw that in there. And replace it. Cool. But now you see I have a much more interesting populated marking menu for when I'm clicking in blank space. Because if you remember, the marking menus or the DAG marking menus are context sensitive, which means if I select over an object, or I have an object selected, I'm going to get one menu. If I select over nothing, I'll get a different menu. If I select with a joint selected, I get a different menu. So depending on what you have selected, it's going to change what that menu shows you. So anyway, so now I have, minimize app. You would be surprised how often that comes into play. I use it all the time. New scene, save scene as, open scene. And I have a bunch of my own custom tools that I use all the time. Set project, and even quit Maya. Like often, like when I want to just quit Maya, it's like bloop, go away, right? I use it all the time. All right, so because of that, and because, I think that's like your first foray into customizing Maya a little bit via scripting and not through like the normal marking menu stuff and the hotbox. I went in and changed, at some point I changed the one for the joints, and I just started changing the one for regular objects. So the joint one, by default, you only have like 3 or 4 things in there, right? So you have set preferred angle, assume preferred angle, some edit joint stuff. But I find that, I added in at some point this 0 channels that I use all the time in my hotbox. But when I'm skinning, I'll be like skin, go back to 0. Skin, go back to 0. Or I want to make sure all my controls are set to 0 or something like that. But often when I'm just doing basic stuff with skinning testing, I want to kick that back to 0. So there's another script out there, and this one is the dagMenuProc, and this is the one that tells it like if you're over a mesh, show this. If you're over a joint, show this. So I'm just going to drop that in there real quick and show some of the updates I did. So if I go and bend my joint, I didn't have to bend joint, but anyway, I have go to bind pose in there, which I end up using all the time. And then I also have 0 joint, and that just zeroes out the rotations, and I constantly use that. So it's really kind of handy because you'll bend it, paint, and then go back to 0 or whatever, or even go back to bind pose. All the time. I added it at one point, and I was like, oh my god, I end up using this thing all the time. I don't, but that's not in there normally. I can't remember. Toggle rotation axis. I've had it for years on my marking menu for the north of the hotbox. And actually, you'll notice how quickly I can select XI all the time. Select hierarchy. I use that constantly. And I love, the toggle rotation axis will go back and forth, but then I also added one for just getting rid of them. Because sometimes what happens is, some are on, some are off, and then you're like if you use toggle, you're just going back and forth. You're like, I just got to get rid of them, Cool. So then, the other day I was working, and I was like, you know what? It's always bothered me that when you are over a mesh and you go to a vertex and you select, you want to select some verts, and you have like a joint or something like that that's upper level on the hierarchy, you end up selecting the stuff in the upper level hierarchy and not the verts that you wanted. So obviously you need to go to component mode by hitting F8, and then you can select it. But I'm like, well, it'd be nice if you just went straight to it. But at the same time, it's kind of nice, to have both options here. So I can, select a joint and a vertex or a face and a joint. That's actually very handy, and I do it all the time. So I don't always want these things to convert over. So I did is I just added this component mode to the lower right, which would be what, southeast. And now I'm in component mode, whichever component mode I'm in, and then I can get out of that by either going back to component mode again, or I can use the object mode, one that's been there forever. Now the thing about the object mode is it's not a toggle. It only goes to object mode, which I think is weird. So if you have a bunch of vertices, go to object mode. It does retain the selection of your verts or whatever component you have, so I guess that's handy. So the only thing I'm having trouble with is where to put component mode. Originally, I put it in the upper left, and I was like, oh, that's a perfect place for it. There's nothing there. And then I started working on some skins, and I was like, oh, wait, right. Paint skin weights tool is there. And I hit that constantly. Always, as a character TD, I'm always painting skin weights. It's just, always going to hit that thing. So I took it out of there because it was messing me up. And then I was like, all right, so what else can I get rid of? So I wanted to get rid of vertex face, but that, for some reason, there's a lot of different triggers that turn that thing on. And by trigger, I basically mean like, it looks at first what it does is it looks at your piece's geometry and says, what is it? Or what do you have selected? It says, oh, you have a piece of geometry. Okay. And then it says, oh, is it skinned? Oh, if it's skinned, then show the menu for paint skin weights. And ordinarily it shows this to multi, which is edges, faces, vertex, all components at the same time. Which is something I rarely use, or never use, I should say. But I really never use vertex face. But for some reason, vertex face I just couldn't get rid of. It just, every place I found to get rid of it, it came back and overrode my component mode. But multi, I can override that, no problem. So I'll dig in deeper and see how to get rid of that. But yeah, so I thought that would just be helpful to show that. So I would start by changing your build object menu items now script. Boy, that's a mouthful. This one here. It's super easy to change, and it can, once you start doing this, you're like, oh, you know what tool I always want, or it could be a modeling tool or whatever that you just always want to use. You just throw it in there. I find it good for scene stuff, and global Maya stuff, and then start getting on the minutia for other things. And again, once you create those things, just take them, dump them in that scripts directory. I'll copy them. Oops, I don't want that. Well, I'll leave it in there. It's fine. Often, though, I'll put them also into prefs, scripts, and put them in there. The reason I normally do that is because these scripts are often version specific. So anytime I open up a new Maya, I'm going to go in there and rerun and grab the original script to see if it's changed from before. So you notice I had a bunch in there. So things like the status line. I don't have my custom time slider even around anymore. These things are constantly changing. There's ways to just add to it without affecting the original script, but I get lazy and I just do it this way. I just rewrite the original script, but I'll copy it to my local area. Anyway, so I hope that's been helpful for somebody, and see you next time. Oh, and I just wanted to add for people that aren't very script savvy, one of the things you can do, okay, so for instance, like my new scene, right? So one of the things you can do is, remember, you can always use Shift Control to populate your current shelf, right? And so if you edit that, it'll actually give you the command that's used, right? So if I go in here and click on Save Preferences, there's a script somewhere called Save Preferences, and that's it. So for like the new scene one, which is very common, I'm just going to copy that and go to my build object items now, whatever. Interesting. Okay, and here you can see the ones that I've added. New scene. So what I originally did was I just copied that and pasted it right there. So I didn't even have to look up scripts. I didn't have to figure out how to do it. Maya had already given it to me, so I just stole that. So if there's like a command, you're like, you know what? I really want the, Oh, the detach. The detach is great, right? So I'll go up there, edit that, detach component. That's all you need. You don't need to go into the minutia of how that because often that script will run another script, which runs another script, which runs another script. So, but you can just do that by just using that one, and you're good to go. So it makes it really easy to do like what I call mill hacking, which is just sort of take an existing script, edit it a little bit, hack in what you want, good to go. All right, cool.